Welcome to Audit the Audit, where we sort out the who and what and the right and wrong of police interactions. This episode covers wellness checks, pedestrian violations, and the right to remain silent, and is brought to us by Daily Mail's channel. Be sure to check out the description below and give them the credit that they deserve. On the night of February 16, 2021, 18-year-old high school student Rodney Reese was walking home from a shift at Walmart in Plano, Texas, when he was approached by officers from the Plano Police Department, who had received a phone call about a man stumbling in the middle of the street in the snow wearing a short-sleeved shirt. The body camera footage begins after the officers had attempted to flag Mr. Reese down from their patrol vehicle.
Incident updated.
Dude, stop. We're trying to help you.
Oop. Hey man, whoop! You trying to get home? Are you trying to get home? You straight? You need a ride somewhere? Hey, look, we just want to make sure you're all right. We just want to make sure you're all right.
Come here.
Sir, you need to talk to us, okay? Sir.
I'm good, bro.
The officers ask Mr. Reese if he would like a ride home, but Mr. Reese declines, informs them that he is all right, and continues to walk home. According to an article about the incident, the officers were sent to perform a wellness check, also known as a welfare check, on Mr. Reese after receiving a call about him. A wellness check occurs when the police respond to a call or other request to check on an individual's well-being or safety, and it is not considered a type of criminal investigation. Instead, when police officers conduct wellness checks, they are performing a quote-unquote community caretaking function, which the U.S. Supreme Court defined in the 1976 case of Katie versus Dombrowski as police investigations and interactions that are, quote, totally divorced from the detection, investigation, or acquisition of evidence relating to the violation of a criminal statute. In the 2017 case of Byram versus State, the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals defined the scope of welfare checks under Texas law, stating that, quote, as part of his duty to serve and protect, a police officer may stop and assist an individual whom a reasonable person, given the totality of the circumstances, would believe is in need of help. However, because the reasonableness of a community caretaking seizure sprouts from its disassociation from the competitive enterprise of ferreting out crime, a police officer may not properly invoke his community caretaking function if he is primarily motivated by a non-community caretaking purpose. Determining whether an officer may properly invoke his community caretaking function is thus a two-step inquiry. 1, whether the officer was primarily motivated by a community caretaking purpose, and 2, whether the officer's belief that the individual needed help was reasonable. In determining whether an officer's belief that the individual needed help is reasonable, Texas courts will evaluate 4 non-exclusive factors, identified by the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals in the 1999 case of Wright versus State, where the court held that, quote, in determining whether a police officer acted reasonably in stopping an individual to determine if he needs assistance, the following factors are relevant to said determination: the nature and level of the distress exhibited by the individual, the location of the individual, whether or not the individual was alone and or had access to assistance independent of that offered by the officer, and to what extent the individual, if not assisted, presented a danger to himself or others. However, the subject of a welfare check is not obligated to assist with the officer's investigations, and under Section 38.02 of the Texas Penal Code, it is only illegal for an individual to refuse to give their name, residence address, or date of birth to a peace officer if they have been lawfully arrested. Therefore, Mr. Reese was not obligated to provide his name or address to these officers during the welfare check.
Can you calm down? All right? Sir.
Don't touch me.
Sir, look, we just want to talk to you.
Oh,
all right?
Good. I'm on the way home. I'm straight.
Okay.
Where are you going?
Okay, but you're walking in the middle of the road.
All right. I understand that. My bad.
The officers accuse Mr. Reese of walking in the road in violation of Section 552.006 of the Texas Transportation Code, which states that, quote, a pedestrian may not walk along and on a roadway if an adjacent sidewalk is provided and is accessible to the pedestrian. If a sidewalk is not provided, a pedestrian walking along and on a highway shall, if possible, walk on the left side of the roadway or the shoulder of the highway facing oncoming traffic. Section 541.302 of the Texas Transportation Code defines a roadway as as, quote, the portion of a highway, other than the berm or shoulder, that is improved, designed, or ordinarily used for vehicular travel, and a highway as the width between the boundary lines of a publicly maintained way, any part of which is open to the public for vehicular traffic. While Mr. Reese claimed he was walking in the road because the sidewalks were icy, under the statutes, he should have walked on the left side of the road instead of the middle if he could not use the sidewalks. Regardless of the original reason the officers attempted to stop Mr. Reese, upon observing a violation of the transportation code, they had the reasonable suspicion necessary to detain him, and likely also had the probable cause necessary to place him under arrest. In the 2019 case of King versus Paxton, the Court of Appeals of Texas in Austin held that while, quote, a welfare check is not a criminal investigation, a welfare check could, in some situations, evolve into a criminal investigation, depending on what the officers observed during the encounter. Although the officers were initially called to the scene to conduct a welfare check on Mr. Reese, once they witnessed him walking in the middle of the road, they could detain him on reasonable suspicion of a pedestrian violation, despite the fact a reasonable officer would probably conclude that he did not need help.
I'm not in there. What's going on?
We just trying to figure out where you going.
Home, I just said that.
Ooh,
Whoa, you okay, dude?
watch out, man.
Where's home at?
Do you want us to just give you a ride?
No, I'm good. I do this every night, literally. I'm straight.
Okay. You ain't cold or nothing?
No, I'm
With that
good.
cheap shirt on?
I just said that. I'm good.
What's your name, man?
Nah,
Huh?
I don't know.
You don't know? Can you just stop and talk to us for a minute?
Bro.
Do you mind? Do you mind just talking to us for a minute? Just talk to us for a minute.
doing?
Just talk to us for a minute.
I ain't gonna put my hand on a female. Please don't touch me.
Okay,
Though.
I'm just trying to
Don't
get
touch
your attention, okay? We're just trying to make sure you're
Ma'am,
okay.
don't touch
We're trying
me.
to make sure you're okay. We're trying to make sure you're
Bro,
okay. Sir?
no, what?
We're trying.
No, what?
We're doing an investigation.
I don't care. I'm going home.
You are officially detained.
No,
Yes,
Sir.
yes you are.
bro, stop.
After informing Mr. Reese that he was being detained, Mr. Reese attempted to walk away from the officers, which prompted them to physically restrain him. Mr. Reese initially resisted being placed into handcuffs and accidentally bumped into one of the officers. After apologizing for touching the officer, Mr. Reese was handcuffed and led to a nearby patrol car.
What's your name?
Let go. I'm gonna take care of your phone, dude.
What's your name? Can you at least tell me your first name?
No, I'm good.
Tell me your first name.
I'm good.
We honestly were just trying to check on you.
That's cool.
Okay.
I said I'm
First
good.
of all, you were in the roadway, which is a
Right.
safety hazard, and you're not supposed to be in the roadway. All right?
You're not at liberty to move around.
Bro,
Okay,
Just
I
relax.
thought you was turning me around.
No,
Why
sir.
are you trying
You
to
were
put
the
me on the
one- you were
ground
the one-
for?
Just relax.
moving around.
Just relax.
You're not at liberty to move
Where do
around.
you live?
I can do it. On it.
Where do you live?
Actually, right now you
Actually, no,
can.
you can't.
Yes, I can.
Where do you live? Where do you live?
All right. If he's not gonna cooperate,
He's going in the car.
popping him in the back of the car.
Come on.
After Mr. Reese refuses to answer questions, one of the officers states that if Mr. Reese is not going to cooperate, then he will be placed into the patrol car, which implies that he will be officially arrested. However, as we have discussed many times on ATA, citizens do not have a duty to assist officers with their investigations, and exercising the right to silence is not refusing to cooperate. The Fifth Amendment protection against self-incrimination exists to protect individuals from being compelled to provide incriminating or potentially incriminating evidence against themselves. However, it is important to note that the Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination is not self-executing, and an individual who wishes to use their right to remain silent must explicitly invoke the privilege, as the U.S. Supreme Court explained in the 2013 case of Salinas versus Texas. In this case, the court held that, quote, a suspect who stands mute has not done enough to put police on notice that he is relying on his Fifth Amendment privilege. In reaching this conclusion, the court rejected arguments that reliance on the Fifth Amendment privilege is the most likely explanation for silence in situations involving police questioning, and that, quote, it would be unfair to require a suspect unschooled in the particulars of legal doctrine to do anything more than remain silent in order to invoke his right to remain silent. Despite the common sense appeal of these arguments, the court concluded that, quote, someone might decline to answer a police officer's question in reliance on his constitutional privilege, but he also might do so because he is trying to think of a good lie, because he is embarrassed, or because he is protecting someone else. Not every such possible explanation for silence is probative of guilt, but neither is every possible explanation protected by the Fifth Amendment. While a court would likely find that Mr. Reese did not expressly invoke his Fifth Amendment privilege, he certainly was within his rights to not answer the officers' questions or assist in their investigation.
Stop right here. Stop right here. Please the car for me. Spread your feet out. Sorry. You got anything that's gonna poke me, stab me, nothing like that? You don't have any weapons on you like that?
The officers eventually placed Mr. Reese in the back of a police cruiser and transported him to the Plano City Jail, where he spent the night. Mr. Reese was charged with being a pedestrian in the roadway in violation of Section 552.006 of the Texas Transportation Code, which is a Class C misdemeanor offense. According to the Plano Police Department's Facebook post on the incident, quote, "The arresting officer noted in the arrest report that although the subject committed the Class B misdemeanor offense of interference with public duties by resisting officers' efforts to detain and handcuff him, the officers elected to only charge him with pedestrian in the roadway." The charges against Mr. Reese were eventually dropped by Plano Police Chief Ed Drain, who stated that the arrest wasn't consistent with why officers were called to investigate in the first place. At the time of writing this episode, it is unclear whether Mr. Reese will be pursuing legal action. Overall, the Plano officers get an F for betraying the community caretaking function of a welfare check, exercising poor discretion by needlessly pursuing Mr. Reese, and for arresting Mr. Reese for a minor violation in an effort to gain control of the situation. Given that welfare checks are not considered criminal investigations, Mr. Reese was under no legal obligation to engage with the officers upon their initial approach, and there is certainly an argument to be made that the stress of being followed by police officers for no apparent reason was a factor in Mr. Reese's violation of the walking in the roadway statute. When Mr. Reese informed the officers that he was not in need of help and that he did not wish to speak to the officers, the community caretaking aspect of the encounter was dissolved, and instead of allowing Mr. Reese to continue on his way, the officers decided to invoke the authority of Section 552.006 to justify their continued pursuit. This is yet another interaction where a lawful justification may have existed to arrest a citizen, but when the totality of the facts are considered, it is clear that the intent of the law was not aligned with the results of its enforcement. What began as an attempt to ensure that Mr. Reese was not in need of assistance quickly evolved into a criminal investigation and arrest, and it appears that the deciding factor for that evolution was Mr. Reese's reluctance to comply with the officers. Another important aspect of this interaction is the line of questioning that was presented to Mr. Reese as the officers were following him. The Plano officers never asked Mr. Reese if he was suffering from any kind of mental disturbance or ailment, and were purely focused on ascertaining Mr. Reese's identity and determining where he intended to go. At no point did the officers express an authentic concern for Mr. Reese's health and well-being, and any reasonable citizen would have likely perceived their actions as hostile and confrontational. The Plano officers utterly failed to consider the practical implications of their conduct, and this interaction showcases the type of behavior that manufactures distrust between members of law enforcement and their respective communities. Mr. Reese gets a B+, because although it could be argued that he was a victim of police retaliation, he did commit a violation in plain view of the officers, and he did resist the officers as they attempted to place him into handcuffs. As mentioned before, there is a high degree of stress associated with any police contact, and Mr. Reese's desire to get away from the officers likely played a role in his decision to walk into the roadway. Setting aside the merits of the national debate regarding police misconduct in America, the societal context of this encounter cannot be ignored. There are millions of Americans who fear interacting with the police, and the hyper-focus that has been placed on police misconduct, coupled with the often exaggerated narratives associated with mainstream media coverage of the issue, is enough to make any reasonable individual question whether their own interactions will render a similar newsworthy outcome. Nearly all major media outlets are guilty of either dramatically amplifying or fiercely downplaying the significance and legitimacy of any police encounter that finds its way into the news cycle, and this leaves many Americans confused, conflicted, and lacking an understanding of even the most basic elements of the issue. It's no surprise that many Americans have subscribed to radical perspectives regarding police when the institutions that have long been held as a beacon of reliable information have all but abandoned the traditional role of providing information situation and context and become infused with partisan ideologies. In this climate, anyone who is contacted by police officers while innocently walking down the street is warranted in feeling uneasy, stressed, and compromised. And escalating a welfare check into an unnecessary arrest does nothing to curb the public's negative perception of law enforcement. Let us know if there is an interaction or legal topic you would like us to discuss in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to check out my second channel for more police interaction content.